Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this segment of One-on-One. I'm Martin Folsom. You know, a lot of people say you do spend a lot of time talking with people who graduated from South Terrebonne. That is true. But we talk about those days in the 70s, they were loaded, so there's a lot of people to interview. Our guest coming up will be Britt. He was one of the members of that 880 relay team that set a national record, and the record still stands today because they went to meters, so the record will never be broken. So when we come back from the break, we'll talk with Britt, a graduate of South Terrebonne. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. And welcome back to One-on-One. As promised, my guest today is Britt, graduate of South Terrebonne. Went on to bigger and better things, but of course, the glory days, Ricky, back in the 70s at South Terrebonne. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate you always reminding people about that track team.
Well, it's hard to forget. I was telling Herman Verdon on the show previous to you that growing up just a track athlete, you know all the track teams that you got to shoot for. Everybody sort of stops at y'all because they know it's unattainable. It's just unbelievable the amount of talent that y'all had. But I want you to bring me back earlier, the earliest years you can remember. Where were you born and what was it like?
Actually, I was born in Marion, South Carolina. My daddy had got out of the timber business and moved to look for a job in the oil field and landed in Houma. So I was 2 years old at the time, so this is home to me. And all my friends and family are here. And I grew up on the east side, primarily on the east side of Houma. And wound up going to Oaklawn Junior High, and that's where I met Herman, and from there to South Terrebonne, and from South Terrebonne to LSU, and then to Nichols.
Yeah, we always make a big deal about when you get from the west to the east side of Terrebonne Parish, and it's changed today. It's much different than it was back then, but that was a palatable thing back in the days because the east side people always said on the west side, y'all grew up soft. On the east side, we grew up strong.
Yeah.
Was there some truth to that?
We always thought so. Yeah. But as you get older, you realize that, you know, people are people wherever you go. Some of my best friends finished at Terrebonne. Some of them finished at Vanderbilt. I can still tell Vanderbilt jokes to my buddies and still get a laugh from
Easy
them.
now, I went to Vanderbilt.
I know.
But you can tell them anyway. No.
Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, and it's funny how when you're in school, your rivals are your rivals.
But it was enormous.
When you graduate, it's all gone. They all become friends.
One of the things that we had reflected on recently was for the Terrebonne-South Terrebonne game, we were both vying for district champs and our senior year. And I don't want to just say that the stadium was full, but the end zones were full also. Yeah. There was probably 13,000 people there for a high school football game.
Yeah. It doesn't happen today.
It doesn't. It's unfortunate because, you know, not only did the players buy into it, but the community bought into it. You know, all kind of ads in the paper, articles in the paper about the rivalry and all. And we had a lot of fun with it. And again, some of those guys today are still some of our best friends.
And the coaches had a way. I never forget when we played Edie White my senior year, Coach Morvaunt, who was an Edie White graduate, Coach Vanderbilt. And he came in and showed us the film of all the coaches at Edie White who he said he hated. He said, we're going over there for one reason. I don't like these people. I hate them. They were his best friends. So, but he convinced the team, we all going, And then later on in life, we always see him drinking at fairs together, having a beer together. We go, whoa, wait, we fell for that. How was Coach Marcello with that? How was he as a motivator?
Oh, look, Coach Marcello loved Vanderbilt. You know, I mean, he had such an appreciation for all the coaches, not just local, but throughout the district, throughout the state. He was well regarded. And Coach Marcella was low-keyed about that. He had some of his assistants doing some of the getting ready speeches for us and all. But Coach Marcella was just the way he would look at you like a father figure, and you knew that you wanted to perform your best for him.
That father figure must have resonated, because Herman said that, Clarence said it when I interviewed him, just everybody. Jay Pennison said it, Skippy.
Sure.
So that father figure must have resonated, because that's how everybody describes him.
He earned it. He was premature gray. He had his gray hair since he was probably in college, but he had this premature gray. He looked like your father or your grandfather, but he was just such a kind man. The first thing he would ask you is, "How's your family doing? I want to know how your family is doing." And I see myself even today, just one of his students, one of his players. I do the same thing when I talk to people. I ask them about their families. And I think it comes from Coach Marcella. That meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to the other guys that we played with.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
When you're growing up on the east side, of course, it's, when there's different subdivisions or different places where people hang out. And, whether it's Smith Ridge or Berg I can name 100 of them. Everybody had their own identity.
That's right.
But then all of a sudden, when you get to South Terrebonne, all these identities had to mesh.
Absolutely.
So the tough guy in Smith Ridge had to mesh with the tough guy in the next subdivision. Maybe there's a tough guy in Center Circle. Maybe there's a tough guy wherever. Ellender wasn't around.
That's right.
So all the tough guys ended up right there. How was that?
You couldn't have described it better. I think, from those neighborhoods that you're referring to, there was always somebody that was the king of the hill there, and all of a sudden you've got a hill full of kings, and it led to a lot of fights. There were lots of fights, me being in one of them as well, but at the end of the day, I look back at the individual that I had my fight with, and I see him today, and he's about 6'4", 280 pounds. He reflected on our fight, and he says, "I don't have any hard feelings about that." And I said, "I'm sure glad you don't." But back in those days, you could fight and become best friends the next day.
Right.
Today, it's not that way, unfortunately.
Me and Herman were laughing about the fact that Steve Trosclair told me that, with all the tension between the races in those days, that, he was a good friend of Jan, a good friend of Herman's, and Herman told him one time when it looked like there might be a fight breaking out, he said, "Steve, I gotta go fight for my side, but the next day we'll be friends again." Pretty much the way it went.
It was pretty much that way, and I'll refer to that fight that I was in. I remember this individual's brother took exception to me fighting his brother. Yeah. I had just got back to school. I was in a bad car wreck, and I'd been out for 8 weeks, and I came back, and I was on crutches still. I'd broken my hip, and this gang wanted to beat me up. They wanted to take it out on me. And the guy over there that's smiling and grinning right now is the one that stopped the group from jumping me.
So you and Herman were always close?
Always. And I used to be a lot closer to him in running up until that car wreck too. After that, I was always on his hip before, but after that, I was more than a hip away from him.
And there was a time when I knew your name, but I didn't know you. And I don't remember where it was that we met, and you introduced yourself, and I went, "The Ricky Britt." Do you remember where it was?
Yes, I remember. It was actually, you had your guitar, and we were at your house. Your brother Mike was hosting a party at your house for a travel baseball team.
Ah, okay.
And that's where we first met.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to remember the exact location.
Yeah.
But the names, it's funny how that works. When
sure.
If you ask a bunch of people in our age group. I don't know how it is with the younger generation. I'm still trying to get a grasp on that. But if you go around asking anybody in our generation, tell me who's, one of the best athletes to ever come out of Terrebonne. Okay, easy, Frank Lewis.
Absolutely.
But then they go, wait. Then the list starts growing.
That's right.
The ones who made, like Frank Lewis, Super Bowl win. Tell me who's the best track team of all time. South Terrebonne.
I wouldn't even say South Terrebonne was the best track team. We had the fastest team, but the best track team was the one a couple of years before us at Terrebonne. And the reason I say that, we were faster than those guys, but they were a complete team in that they had field events, they had long jump, they had discus, shot put, javelin, Danny Martin on the javelin, setting all the records. Yeah. And they were overall a better balanced team than we were, but of course we were faster.
Yeah. Well, you just gave me a few more one-on-ones that I could be doing. But was that the one where, was Coach Hobgood coaching that team?
He sure was.
Because he was sure fond of, we'd talk at the coffee shop, Martin Bouquet and all that group.
Well, like you said, you had looked up to the guys older than you. Yeah. Martin was one of those guys I looked up to when I was younger. Him and Danny Price. Yeah. Danny Price set a record at South Terrebonne nobody will ever achieve, and he lettered in 4 sports for 4 years.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. And then Martin, I remember going to the state track meet to watch him, and he was in the blocks, and I didn't think he jumped, but the officials did, and he was disqualified. And I wanted to see it because Harold Porter, this state record holder, he was running against him. So I really wanted to see that matchup, but it didn't happen. But those are two of the guys that come to mind that I looked up to as well.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
How'd you develop your toughness? Because people think a track is, you don't have to be tough. Let me tell you, being a track guy, you got to be tough because they talking smack on the other side.
Right.
And the smack starts right when you get in the stadium till the time you leave. And then you're going to meet them again 10 or 12 more times during the season. There's always that it's individual competition, although you're competing for a team title. You got to have thick skin.
Absolutely. When I was in the 6th grade, I was 6 foot tall. So I was taller than most of the other guys in my class and wore a size 12 shoe back in those days. And back then, a lot of the older guys thought, that they wanted to try me or fight me or, this is a puny little guy. I can take, he's tall, but he's lame. He can't defend himself. But one thing my dad did teach us was my dad was a Normandy survivor. He stormed the beaches of Normandy, God bless him. And anyway, he was also the light heavyweight boxing champ for the North Atlantic. He went on to West Point, was a rifle instructor there, but he taught us, all the boys, how to fight. And so I knew what I was doing anyway.
So you're sitting there and you're growing. First of all, how does a guy with a size 12 foot run? What was your best time in the 100?
I was following Herman, and he ran a 9.6, and I was on his hip. That was the fastest I ever ran, I believe. He was just jogging through it, and so when people ask me, I say a 9.65 because I was that close to him.
And there's always, I remember in the high jump at Vanderbilt, I wanted to go against people that would push me. Because most meets, you just go through the motions, you win it, and you walk out. But you always want that guy who's going to give you the extra push. You had 4 of them.
Well, also we had a friend of ours that was a high jumper, and I kind of thought I wanted to high jump too. Because the first time I tried it, I cleared 6 foot, and I thought, how I can score in this, and we can make that, But we were all limited to just 4 events.
Right.
So,
right.
But we had such a talented team, We had Danny Henry on that pole vault, Danny was a fabulous athlete in his day.
I saw the old picture in your scrapbook. And, you know, you're running the guys now and you hear all the stories, but then you go back and you look at the program of the scrapbook and you say, they look like an athlete, you know, definitely. Stocky and
Yes, indeed.
I always thought pole vaulters were a bit crazy. I was having that conversation with our pole vaulter yesterday that pole vaulters are just cut a little different than most people because you're allowing a stick to get you 13, 14, 15 feet in the air.
Right.
And in college, a little more. And that's pretty high.
It sure was, and pole vaulting is near and dear to my heart too because my former neighbor, Charles Laurent, he had 3 kids pole vaulting.
Yeah.
2 of them in college and the other in high school. But you know, he did everything he could to get his kids prepared and bought a pit and everything else and was totally committed to it. And I'm kind of looking back and saying, wait up, he's got this pit. He bought a pit, bought the pole, which was $500 or $600, you know. Yeah. And, you know, he's got quite an investment in this, but, you know, it paid off.
But isn't that what we all did? I had a high jump bar in my backyard with inner tubes.
Oh, wow.
So I'd hit the inner tubes and bounce into my mama's ferns. She wasn't crazy about it, but...
You weren't hurt.
No, I would hit the bricks every now and then.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I have a lot of back problems. But that was the fun of it all.
Absolutely.
We didn't have the cell phones. I remember when the Atari games came out, we were still all playing outside.
Right, right.
I mean, so the parents would go, we don't want you in the house. Go play. And that's where you develop your skills, pretty much.
Absolutely. I remember, you know, as a youngster, I'd get out there, and we didn't have all the video games back then. So for fun, I'd just go outside and kick the football. I punted at LSU, but I was punting, and I would try and catch it as well. See how far I could punt it, and then try and catch it as well.
Oh, wow.
The punt. So then that's when I learned it's more important to get altitude than distance, you know.
Right.
And so that was a skill that I developed kind of just because I was bored with what everything else I was doing.
But you weren't just a track, just like most of you guys on that relay team, pretty doggone good football players. And I remember, if I read correctly one time, half the times you touched the ball, you were scoring a touchdown. Pretty close to half.
Yeah, the defense was always worried about the other guys, the ones that were faster and that could handle the ball well. And when I did, you know, receive it or catch it, you know, I tried to make the most I could out of it. And,
you had to get some newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Melvin Johnson, Herman Bird, Robert LaGuard, and George Washington.
George Washington, Steve Trusclair.
I
know he's a friend of yours, but Steve was a tremendous asset to our football team.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have got as far as we did without him.
He's still tough.
He is.
I'm going to say a little story. He tripped the other day when he was with Gordy. Someone tripped and hit the concrete. Of course, everybody like, you okay? You pop right up. Yeah, I'm fine.
Like, why?
Concrete might be cracked.
That's Steve.
Yeah, he just built tough. You know?
Yeah.
Danny Henry the same way. They just built tough.
Danny
you know.
is.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.